let's see what it says here. Reviewing your content. Your audience will be able to see you in a moment. Get ready, it says.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yes, and now we're live. Okay, so let me just share this around and wait for those to get into here before we do anything. No. Well, I don't know why it keeps showing that, but whatever. Let's see what it shows on the watch page. Cool. No. All right. We'll share this. Share in a group. So we getting? I haven't really been paying attention. Have people been commenting on our Facebook page at all, or?
There's a couple people. There was one guy that was talking about how he loves to listen to us on his way to work.
Oh, okay.
And I said, well, we love to be heard, so and that works out in our favor.
Yes, it does.
I did not know that the ad campaign on Facebook. I was just like, oh, well, yeah, I'll promote the page. What the heck? Not realizing they were going to charge me for it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's why I was like, oh,
yeah.
He did that?
Yeah, then once I figured that out, I was like, okay, ad campaign's over. Can't afford that right now. So, but hey, we got a free month's advertisement out of it, and 100 more likes than we had before.
Yeah.
So, word is out on the street. We're going to be remaking Shakedown. You can play the Sam Elliott part. I want to be Peter Weller, and I'm not sure who we're going to get to play the drug dealer, but it'll be okay.
Sure. Welcome to chat. All right, so we can probably get this rolling. Let me just pull up my software.
Okay.
Test 1, 2, 3. There. Okay, perfect. I know Chris wanted us to talk about his Shadow of Evil, and he also had a question for us too. So.
Okay. You mean Chris Tyner and the Hizzy? I'm sorry. I think that was meant to be your line.
Yeah, I know, because it sounded like a DJ, so that's why I said that, but whatever. Alrighty, let me pop out the chat just in case people want to ask a question of us. If I can remember how to do that. Pop out. There we go. Not worried about who's watching, I'm just worried about questions. Alright, let's get this rolling so we can get going. Are you ready?
I am ready.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Classic Faserip Podcast. We are live on the YouTube. I'm Vince, and I'm sitting with my co-host, Keith. Keith, how are you, buddy?
I am fine, Vince. Thank you for having me back once more. They let me out, and I'm free on bail, so we're good to go.
Oh yeah, well you're a perma person here from now on, so don't worry about it. You can escape the asylum every week, but we'll see what happens. Maybe they'll keep you captured one week, right?
That's it. Me and Howling Mad, right? Cellmates.
So we got some good feedback going recently. A bunch of people have been commenting on our page and commenting on the YouTube videos. Every once in a while, someone will say "great show," and we had some questions here and there. But we picked some out. I haven't had any emails, but you can email us at ax. Wow, I'm from New York now. Ax New York. Ask the DM at theevildm.com is our temporary email address, or you can still email us at bullpen@classicfaserip.com. They will get forwarded to me. Either one works, but I have more control over the Ask the DM right now. So we did have a question from Chris Tyner. I'm not going to do what he wanted me to do. So stop.
In the hizzy!
Yo. Yeah, there we go. You happy? He wants to know how we handle movement in our games. He has recently taken up using mapping application called 3D Virtual Tabletop on his iPad and using a projector or a TV for his players to add some flavor to the game. He sizes squares on the map to where each square is equal about 8 to 10 feet, which gets him pretty close to the area movement in the game. They rarely get into it, but he'd like to hear how we handle things like that in our game, such as chase scenes with two individuals, regular-wise, or using up speed power. Mine is pretty simple. I haven't actually had to use this chase scene objective too much in our actual play X universe. I kind of, when we did have someone that needed to be chased after, I kind of compared the flight power versus his super speed, and I had to roll off as far as to see if he can catch up to him. Do you remember the chase rules for, I think it was 3rd edition D&D? Or I don't know if you played 3E D&D.
No, I stopped after 2nd. After they got all my money that time, decided no more.
I don't blame you. But they did have some rules. It was kind of like a contest roll versus roll type thing. So if depending on where he was, so for example, if the super speed person had incredible and then the other person had amazing, I had the two of them roll versus each other, and he had to get above what the higher rank rolled to even catch up to him. So if you have amazing and you rolled in, say, the green, and he below incredible rolled in the green, you would not get any ground on him whatsoever because he's one rank higher. So I always said he was always a step ahead. If he rolled the green and then he rolled a yellow, I said that he caught up to him, but he was not able to catch him due to it being one rank still above. If he wanted to catch him, he had to roll red. That's how I handled, because he's super speed wise. How do you handle in your games?
Well, that's not too far. I mean, in terms of, in terms of how the rules handle stuff like that, if it's a rank above, it has to be a red. If it's the same rank, it's considered a yellow. If it's within a couple ranks, it's considered a green. I mean, at least in terms of the rules. But when I've had to do anything with a map, I always try to make sure that I use one of the Marvel maps so that it has carefully delineated areas. And the thing that always got me is people are either a stickler for the area rules and definition of what an area is, 1 city block, 44 yards, or they completely ignore it.
Okay.
Once you come inside, the rules for that change, because technically it's not a city block inside. The best you can do when it comes to indoors is make each room an area, and that would probably be your better bet. I live in a mobile home. It's got a total of, 2, 3, 4, 5-ish rooms and a bathroom. So, I mean, technically, you could consider each room an individual area. And, that might be 5 areas. You might want to call it 3. You might want to do whatever you want with it. But I tend to try to stick as much to that rule, or at least the areas per round movement, as I can. Now, obviously, if it gets obscene, let's say you have, I don't know, Shift X land speed, and you're moving X number of areas around, it's going to be a little more difficult to gauge something like that. Also, try to lend an area, some sort of feeling of authenticity with it. And if you're moving at high rates of speed, unless you have the agility to factor into that, to corner quickly, corner on a dime, so to say, you're going to be doing an awful lot of what they used to do in the 1990s Flash series, which is long, winding wraparound so that he could, he has to go 3 blocks out of his way so he could turn around. Otherwise, that's why all these characters, especially speedsters, funny that we're actually dealing with that tonight, and this being one of the questions.
Yeah.
That's why speedsters have such high agility, so that they can, when it comes time to corner, they're doing it quickly. Can you imagine a speedster, running, I don't know, 300 miles an hour and having good agility? I mean, that poor guy's, he's going to get hit by everything, or everything's going to hit him. So yeah, for me, I just try to keep it as simple as I can, gauge it as best I can. Obviously, if you're talking normal people versus a speedster, I always try to use the unspoken comic book rule of the guy with the gimmick power wins. Submariner is going to be the best in the water. Flash is always going to be the fastest on land. Superman is the strongest, so on and so forth. So I try to play it that way, with an eye towards the rules of the game. If somebody is using super speed and you don't have super speed, they're going to outrace you. And unless there are some mitigating circumstances, you are probably not going to catch them. On the other hand, if it's 2 speedsters running, I just compare speeds, and then start making them roll much like you do. With, if they roll a red, they can catch up with one another, might catch the guy, as opposed to just catching up with him or trailing along behind him. So, but yeah, it's a very, that can be a difficult question to answer, because how do you make a speed character who isn't going to defeat whatever every time within a few seconds in a game? I mean, guy moves at 300 miles an hour and you move at, I don't know, the top speed of a tree-bound sloth, and
Usually,
what are you going to do? How are you going to handle that? So, I think it takes a certain type of player and a certain type of GM to make sure that doesn't go overboard.
Okay, so we could transition into. We're going to talk a little bit tonight, obviously, as the topic says on here on the YouTube here. We're going to talk a little bit about speedsters and the difference between all of the speed running powers, because there's quite a bit of difference in some of them. Some of them give you a lot of detail, and then some of them give you like 0.0 detail as far as what you can do and what you can't do. I'll start with the basic revised rule set here, and we'll just go over these real quick before we get into the whole topic of themselves of speed. Now, basic revised rules, or revised basic rules, whichever one you want to call it, only listed as lightning speed. I didn't see anything else for speed in here. Did you? Ever?
No,
right?
No. And that's a holdover from the advanced set. Lightning speed is a holdover from the advanced set, that's where that comes from. But it's I always liked lightning speed, how their definition, and it was very simple. You accelerate to full speed within 1 round and can stop within 1 area. And I'm like, that's great. Otherwise, it's you start off at feeble, that's another thing. Let's say you have amazing speed and you're running, and you have X number, you can do X number of areas around. Acceleration becomes a factor. At least it's supposed to. I mean, the game actually has rules for how to accelerate and how you can accelerate. So it quickly becomes a situation where, okay, your character moves at, I don't know, his base movement is 3 areas around. So if you can move at 22 areas around at top speed, it would take you what, 6, 7 rounds, 7.5 rounds to accelerate full speed. You're already making endurance feat rolls, trying to keep from passing out or lack of oxygen or whatever else. So it gets sort of crazy.
So in the power description, it lists that this power rank will always be at least one rank higher than the hero's endurance. Why do you think they did that? Does he need the speed to be higher than his endurance to withstand? I didn't really understand why they did that, but I know you would have to have a high endurance to deal with the high speeds, but why is it higher than your endurance?
That comes back to land movement.
Okay.
After so many rounds, and I'm not looking at the rules right now. I'm trying to remember this off the cuff. As I remember it, the rule states that you can run a number of rounds equal to your endurance rank divided by 10. So if you have, and I'm probably misremembering that completely, but it boils down to, if you have monstrous endurance, you're running for 7.5 rounds before you have to make an endurance feat to keep your breath, continue your pace, whatever else. Now, there are ways around that. The advanced game said if you move at three ranks less speed. So let's say you have amazing, you're running at, your top speed is amazing speed. Let's say you decide, you know what, I'm going to cruise at excellent speed. You're not having to make endurance feat rolls because you're running at far less speed than you could. You're conserving energy while you're doing it. And in theory, unless you're just going cross country or something like that, you probably won't need to make an endurance feat roll anytime soon. The idea, I think, was that, with endurance, if you're hitting top speed and continuing at top speed, or occasionally having to push it beyond your normal speed, you would have to make those endurance feat rolls, and it would help if you had a decent, or at least a somewhat good endurance to begin with. You probably want an excellent or higher, just because that also factors into how many rounds or how many areas around you can move, just base movement. So it's one of the. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was thinking because say you have a GM that's like, you know what, you guys could just pick your powers, but I want you to roll your abilities. Mm-hmm. And say you're like, oh, okay, cool, that's great, I like that idea, and boom, right in your mind, I'm gonna play like a Quicksilver or the Flash. I'm like, I'm gonna be a speedster. Yeah. So you decide that your endurance, you roll a remarkable. So you're like, awesome, I'm going to have an incredible super speed rank. Mm-hmm. Right there. Right? Yep. I mean.
Yep. Well, now, and that's the other thing. You can actually roll. I mean, as a GM, I would give them the option, you can either take it at incredible. But if you look at, charts for power ranks go off of, I think, column 4. So you have the potential of getting a monstrous. If you roll it, if you opt not to roll it, you can have the incredible, or you can roll it and take what you get.
But it always is one rank higher. So regardless of what you roll, basically you might as well roll, because you're still going to get that incredible no matter what.
Or unless you decide, as GM, hey, look, if you're going to roll, you're going to roll, and you're going to take what you get. Like I said, is that fair? I don't know if it's fair or not, but I've seen people do it.
I'm laughing at the chat comments because Mud Puppy jumped in there and said his cruising speed is feeble. He likes to mosey.
I tend to amble.
Amble.
on occasion I sashay or do a pirouette. So
Okay. Also, I just pulled out just because we need some other things to look at because it's always fun to get that other point of view out there. I did pick up a while ago JLibby's G Core Prime, which is
I have not checked that out.
oh really?
Yeah, I want to say either I started to look at it or I didn't. I can't remember how that ended up. And I just it always comes down to, hey, do I have extra money to spend to buy this? No, I don't. Okay, well, I'm just gonna stand over here and look at it. And I'm the area of the country I live in is very much Bible Belt, and the nearest game shop is about 180 miles away from me.
Ah.
So yeah, my ability to get new gaming stuff either has to be done through Amazon or the fine folks in Atlanta. So yeah.
Well, if you like PDFs, you can go online, but as you can see, I like PDFs this much.
Yeah.
This is a book. Yeah. Now, I mean, I use my iPad, to look up things randomly, but if I get a book to read, like a new game, I print it out, bind it, then I just sit down and I absorb the book. That's pretty much my favorite thing to do. I don't like reading on my iPad for more than just research-wise. So.
Gotcha. And there's nothing wrong with that. I know a whole host of people that can't stand Kindles but love to read. And it's just a new form of doing it. There is something to be said about a book that has weight, that has you can feel the paper and the ink underneath it and the whole 9 yards. So I get where you're coming from when it comes to role-playing books. Unless it's just something that I really have no great desire to buy, in which case I'll hunt down a PDF for it real quick. But if it's something that I really want, I'll find a physical copy of it. Get it.
Right. But Jay's G-Core Prime is a different take on Faserip. It's very interesting. I really like the concept of the game. I haven't had a chance to play it. I have it on my table, on the side, hey guys, here's a book type deal. And that's how I get my group interested in games. That's how I got them to play this game, Marvel here, that we're talking about. I kind of left it on the table and they kept looking at it, going, oh, maybe we should try it. Boom, pulled them right in.
There you go.
But he has super speed in his list of powers, and it pretty much is similar to how the Facerip rules work. His is coded differently with ranks, but he does include in here that you can make more actions based upon the speed that you have. So if you have say for example, let's go with Remarkable. We'll say that's equivalent to his 30 rank here in the book. You would have 3 actions to do upon right then and there.
Okay. I'm not adverse to that.
No, it's definitely something it's cool to look at.
Yeah, and it works. I mean, if you can make it work and you can explain it in a way that's functional. I've seen a lot of stuff where speed characters are involved that is, in my mind at least as a GM, broken, because you either make it either works or it doesn't, and if you're looking at it going, there is no way on God's green earth I would be able to handle that in my game. It's not even a controllability factor. I'll give you an example. I statted out the Flash ages ago. It's floating around floating around the interweb. Let's call it that.
The interwebs.
Yeah. And I know that it's been regurgitated and reused, and I can tell you that I know this because of the way the power stunts are listed on every version that I've seen. I'm like, okay, those are my power stunts, and I know them because I wrote them all out 25 years ago and still have the original character sheet where I wrote it all down. So I mean, I'm looking at it going, somebody's just regurgitating the same thing, and it's nice, but it's one of those things where it's like, I just came up with very basic sort of, and I based it on the Wizard. from Squadron Supreme, because at the time that was the closest you were going to get in Marvel to the Flash. So, he had hyper speed, he moves as quick, he can do this many power stunts, he can attack this many times around, blah blah blah. And like I said, I can tell when it's been regurgitated. A lot of that stuff has found a new home with people updating stuff, and not bothering to give credit where credit's due. So, but hey, that's the interweb for you.
People do that all the time. They just chop their own stuff up and not care.
That's it. That's it. So, but no, it's one of those things where I think that as long as you can make it work, and at the end of the day, I think that's probably going to be your best bet. I like the idea of having multiple actions based on the power rank of your speed. That actually, to me, that works. I don't know that I would allow, like, if the guy has, let's say, unearthly, I don't know that I would allow 10 actions in a round. You're having to move awfully quick, and it would depend on the type of action you're doing, obviously. Programming a computer might be a little difficult. However, picking up a handful of rocks and throwing them at people, that I could see happening. That sort of thing. So I guess it would depend on how they did it.
Okay. I also grabbed, for a little more flavor, to the clone that's floating around also. Faserip, which is free through DriveThruRPG.
Okay.
They do list super speed as well. And just basically says you can move at incredible speeds, and it's based on your power rank, pretty much. That's it. And it gives a bunch of alternate powers that will go along with the super speed, like air control, fast attack, phasing, regeneration, spinning, vibration control. Flexibility is in extending your super speed to a person with you while you're running. Like the Flash, when he runs, you grab people and run with them. They're able to run too. Okay. Defending somebody and various other super speed things. But I'm not sold on this at all, using it, because I'm not sure. I don't even see the purpose of this really when I have all the other books, but I guess this was more so you can make your own material for it, and it's the legal way around it.
Well, yeah, okay.
Because the chart in the back, as you can see, I don't know if you've ever looked at this, but looks like that.
Yeah, it's been recolored and
it's similar, but altered. It's on the bottom, and
here this is the
they renamed the ranks and everything, things like that.
Okay. And I know about retro clone stuff. I've seen Labyrinth Lord, which is all first edition AD&D, in first edition Dungeons and Dragons, and I mean I've seen that stuff. My thing is that, if you're going to go the route of releasing a game, and don't get me wrong, I'm glad that there's a resurgence in the Marvel game. I really am. Whether it's Faserip or G-Core or the group of us writing stuff, and wherever we're writing it and releasing it, however we're releasing it, I love it. I mean, I love, I can remember the day when used to go hunt down stuff all over Cincinnati and find it and would be like, oh my God, they've got a copy of Concrete Jungle. I can now get a copy for $6,
Oh, jeez.
Or, oh my God, it's New York, New York. I've never seen this before. How is this going to factor into everything else? And, really thanks to the internet and eBay and places like dragonstrove.com and a couple other Amazon, you can pretty much find all this stuff, even though it's out of print now, relatively inexpensively. But I mean, if you want to modify your own rules and do your own thing, then I would think Faserip and G-Core would be just as valid, and if not, a good idea. I mean, it's a new spin on an older thing. So.
Oh, actually, I'm being told right now in the chat room, Lord Sidious is saying Facerip was created years ago by someone on the Classic Marvel Forever board. A professional writer was paid to pretty much strip the Marvel copyrighted stuff from it.
Oh, okay.
I wonder who that was. That's interesting to know. I guess it was the person who wrote the book. That answers my question.
Yeah.
Which was, we'll see in a second here. But there's also another one. I think 4C is also a generic copy of this.
I think so too. Now I think I have seen 4C, if memory serves, and I don't. I've seen. It seems like I've seen one of the clones. I can't remember which one it was, and I got it and was like, okay, I'm gonna take a look at this. And I sat down and looked at it. And was like, this is sort of wildly different than. It might have been G Core that I saw, and I may be misremembering it, but it was different enough that I was like, it's like, I don't know. It's like when you're a kid and you get caught doing something you're not supposed to be doing. It's like, oh, I feel uncomfortable now. I'm looking at something I shouldn't be looking at. And and I just was like, I don't know what to make of this. I don't know how to handle this. So,
yeah, if the idea was to make a free system so people can make make supplements for Marvel, basically using this new generic system. Obviously, you couldn't use Marvel copyright, but you can probably make up your own stuff and be like, "Hey, this is the Unisher," something like that.
Yeah.
We also had to take a look at Hyper Running, which is also in the Ultimate Powers book, and Hyper Speed. Now, I did see when doing research on this, and maybe you would know because you've been researching and looking into this a lot longer than I have. I haven't, like I said, I just really recently started playing in the last 10 years, again after like the 80s. But I did see references to Hyper Agility. Now, do you recall that anywhere?
That is in one of the Ultimate Addendas. One of the Dragon Magazine articles, I want to say it was a power that got left out. My understanding from the many times I think it's been asked about, and Dave Martin probably has had to reply to the question. My understanding is that it was supposed to be included in the Ultimate Powers book, but like Hyper Intake Expulsion, i.e., Super Breath, and a couple other things, it got left out. And you'll occasionally catch references to powers, or it'll say, bonus power is such and such, like Hyper Agility. And Hyper Agility was supposed to be handled, I think, in the same way that Hyper Intelligence is, which is to say, it either adds to your rank, supplementing it further, or it's a temporary bonus that you can call upon for a certain number of rounds a day. Hyper running and hyper speed I enjoyed both of them, but I thought they were both mixed bags the way they were presented in Ultimate Powers. I thought they should be given a little more. You go to the point of separating them, and they have an explanation, but the explanations, I don't know if it reminded me too much of a word problem from math, and I zoned out on it. If your character has typical hyper speed, he can move at 6 times faster than a normal human being. That's great. So you mean my speed is 6 times faster than a normal person, so I'm moving 18 areas around as opposed to 3? Give me a little more explanation to that. Just let me get a rank number. And what I did in my game, at least, and this is how we differentiated people from, you have your hyper runners, you have your, lightning speed hyper running, which is all land based.
Right.
The speed chart for land based. Now, hyper speed was our version of characters that were more like the Flash. We used the air chart for that speed rank, those speed ranks. If you had hyper speed, that counted as 2 powers, and I don't think it does in the original write-up for it. But our explanation was that it allowed you to move at an accelerated rate. Suddenly, you went from being able to run, I don't know, good at 60 miles an hour. I'm not sure what good is on the flight chart, but I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 120. So suddenly you're moving faster, stronger, the whole 9 yards. You get up into the unearthly and monstrous. I think is 375 miles an hour. So you'd really be, and that's to me that always seemed Quicksilver never seemed very fast, and it wasn't until they started playing around with his speed in probably the early 90s, early mid 90s that it really, you actually saw him doing things that somebody of that caliber of character should probably be doing.
He's
If
listed
that
as
makes
Shift
sense.
X, yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah, and it's the Shift X originally. I mean, he had lightning speed, but it was lightning speed at ground based. It was like 120 miles an hour, and that's fast, no doubt about it. But 120 miles an hour compared to say, oh, I don't know, to use an example, the Flash, uh, who's running around at light speed, beyond light speed. You're I know it's apples and oranges, but still, you're talking about 120 miles an hour. That's fast you can go, buddy. You need to up your A game. So
So, sort of on topic, we do have a kind of a question that jumps in to answer what we were just talking about, almost. But
okay.
I'm gonna throw it in here because it's kind of interesting because I have an answer, but see what you say. Uh, Robert Cobb wants to know what's the big deal about using Faserip clones versus the Marvel game itself? It's just a few rules and choose your power. What is
I
your
mean, I personally don't have a problem one way or the other with it. Um, I think it's whatever you like and whatever you're comfortable with. The Marvel game to me, and I think one of the things this goes back to one of our first podcasts where we talked about why is it still resilient 20 plus years later is the simplicity of it. People can roll up character. Now, just bear in mind, Robert, I've not done anything with the G Core game or the Face Rip or any of that. So I don't know as much about the rules, say, as Vincent, who actually has copies of it and probably has read through them. Um, but I like the simplicity of Marvel. You can sit down and within 20 minutes have a game going. Uh, Whether people are picking powers out of the Ultimate Powers book or the Player's book or the whatever and just rolling random ranks, or they're rolling randomly generated characters. Um, if you want to use, um, I think a lot of people's biggest complaint in terms of the Marvel game, though, has always been the rules for karma loss for killing. And I have heard more arguments about that. I've got a real good friend who, when we talk about Star Wars role playing game, any use of any dark side power, even if you're doing it uh, to save the life of 1 million people, garners you dark side points, which starts you down the path.
Ooh.
So yeah, so and he complains, well, how is it that I could save 1 million people with this, but I still get a dark side point? How is that even fair? And I'm like, well, unfortunately, that's just the way those rules are written. You know, well, you should change them. Well, I could change them, but then you're going to want to power game that. So I think it's a matter of what sort of game you want and what you want to do with it. If you know, am I lax on when it comes to killing in Marvel? It I let the circumstances, uh, uh, you know, fit the situation. If you and I don't know, Jigsaw are fighting out in the middle of the street. Jigsaw takes the little old lady and is gonna kill her if you don't back off, and you shoot Jigsaw and drop him below 0 health. And well, hey, if you're Punisher knockoff number 3, you have no trouble with this. If on the other hand I also think it goes back to what kind of character you want to play. If you're Captain America, on the other hand, Cap really doesn't want to kill anybody. I'm sure he has, but it's one of those situations where I think it just depends on what sort of game you want, what sort of campaign you run. Also, if there's stuff I don't know, not knowing anything about. I want to say GeForce is the one that I've seen where they've got like a bunch of supplements for it.
Use a lot of
Yeah,
supplements. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, like I said, I've not looked at any of them. I can't say anything about it. I don't really know anything about it, but the supplements look slick. I like that. I like the fact that if it looks pretty, I'll check it out. And it just wasn't. It's nothing bad against either one. Don't get me wrong. I think that's probably, if you're looking for an answer from me, I don't have a problem one way or the other with it. I've got no real experience with it, and the groups I play with are like, "What? You mean I got to learn some new rule system? I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that." So, it's can you get people interested? So,
I have no problem with clones. Being a clone writer myself for a Holmes D&D clone that won actually an award is for it. If I get to brag for myself for 2 seconds, because I never do that, but it did win an award. Mazes and Perils. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but I did write that, and it did. So writing a clone.
Wait a minute. You wrote Mazes and Perils?
Yes, I did.
I've never heard of it.
I know. Not many people have, but it did win an award in any award, so I get to brag.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey,
But
that's great.
being a clone writer, I have no problem with clones, but when it comes to the Marvel game, I want the Marvel flavor. I want the descriptions. I know it's just a matter of picking powers and everything, but Faserip, they've changed all the ranks and everything. I have to relearn ranks, and I grew up playing this in the 80s, so I guess it's more of a
nostalgia.
A childhood nostalgia, yeah. It's just like the DC Heroes game. When Pulsar Games got the license supposedly and renamed it Blood of Heroes.
Yeah.
When I got that book, which is somewhere around here, I don't know where it is offhand, but I have it somewhere on my shelf. It just was like, I don't know. I read it. It was like a train wreck for me reading it. Like, oh, what did they do? Oh, like one of those. I couldn't. I wanted my DC. I wanted my childhood DC there. So.
Oh, exactly. And I mean, that's why I enjoy writing and getting to see the stuff that gets produced in the unofficial canon group. To me, it's a crying shame that there's not like an open license that they can that Marvel would allow this stuff to be done. Now, obviously, you would have to come up with some way of keeping it from devolving down into people just writing the worst possible garbage and putting characters in extreme situations or semi-pornographic material or whatever. But I mean, you would think that there would be some way for it's an untapped market. I mean, it really is. If you look at the stuff we've produced, it's fantastic. I mean, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but the Golden Age book, the Silver Age book,
the Asgard book,
the Asgard book, which you've seen. So I mean, and I don't. I'm sure you noticed we've split the Asgard and the Olympian stuff. That's actually going to be the second book in the series. We've done, Steve Jolly is did the cover work for it. We sat down and hammered all that out through the week, and I got the proof for the Asgard stuff. I've still got to go through mine. I got some notes from a couple people about that they've looked at it and noticed a couple things, but it's coming within probably the next week or two. They both are. But it's just going to be a matter of making sure that everything is done. But it's a fantastic looking book. And I'm like, it's a shame that this is the only way you're going to get to see this. This is the only way this is ever going to get to be done is if the fans do it. Because there should have been a book for this stuff. Marvel should have had their own Golden Age book before it got written. Marvel, I mean, you've seen DC's World at War. It's an awesome book, but it's paper. I mean, it's thin, and the characters are all truncated, but you have virtually everybody in there. And when I was doing the Golden Age book, I was like, I just want it to be, if if I can get close, that's what I wanted. I just wanted to get close to World of War. And then somebody compared it, saying that it was, as good as that. And I was like, that's it. This guy, I don't know who this dude is, but he's now my new best friend. So, and that was, I just want people to realize just how much hard work goes into this. I mean, you know, and I'm glad that people like the Classic Marvel Forever and the Google groups are still around. And before we get too late in the game, Chris Tyner's Shadows of Evil. That is a fantastic book. If you have not looked at it,
Yo, Chris in the house.
What up, Chris? Somewhere he's just dying over all this. He's gonna be loving the attention. But that is a fantastic book. He was super, super nice, and I remember seeing the cover for it and thinking, "Wow, that is gonna be killer." And then he sent me this nice little message, and he was like, "Dude, I've used a lot of your stuff. I hope you don't mind." And I was like, "Oh my God, someone used my book for something. This is great." So I'm just so happy that it's getting produced, and it looks so fantastic. And if you have not checked it out, it is a worthy addition to anything that TSR did. I mean, and you're going to have things in there that you probably don't ordinarily see in a Marvel comic, like Cenobites, and there's a couple people on the cover that you may notice that aren't exactly Marvel characters, but it's okay. It's all right. I'm sure if you look at the back of the Golden Age book, you'll find characters that aren't exactly Marvel characters too. But hey, it's alternate ideas for campaigns set in that setting.
Yeah, you took the time to do it, put it together, and give people great examples to use in their games. Who cares?
That's it. I mean, at the end of the day, we wouldn't be talking about this game if we didn't love it. And I mean, I've played Marvel since 84, 85, off and on. I had a 20-year-old Marvel campaign that went forever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, there was, we had websites dedicated to it. It was called the Dead End Avengers. And it was, that name came from a buddy of mine who, he came over and he said, "Well, what are you guys playing?" And we said, "Well, we're playing Marvel superheroes." And he goes, "Marvel superheroes? What are you guys playing Marvel superheroes for?" And I said, "Oh, and that's sort of explaining the campaign to him." And I said, "Yeah, we, it's a game based on us as superheroes. We were all like 17, 18 years old. We just thought this was the greatest idea in the world." And he goes, "You as superheroes? What is it, like the Dead End Avengers?" And that's how the name came up. And somewhere in the mid '90s, there was some sort of ska band that contacted us, and they were trying to muscle us to drop or change the name because they were like, "Well, we've been the Dead End Avengers for." I'm like, "Dude, Marvel Comics will not license that name to you. We're using it as unofficially as you are. You can just wrap it up and take it home." So. But it's funny. I mean, it's one of those things where, people love it. We still talk about it. We all still want to be a part of it. You're either running the game or a clone or whatever, and you like it. I mean, there's something to be said about superheroes. I always thought that Unbreakable, M. Night Shyamalan's movie about superheroes. It was, spoilers, 20-year-old spoilers for anybody here, but it's a...
Oh, wait, hold on. All right, go ahead.
Okay.
In case they want to tune out.
Yeah, really. I mean, heaven forbid you haven't actually seen the movie and you're a comic book fan, but it's a movie about a supervillain looking for a superhero. I mean, when you break it all down, that's exactly what it's about. And once you realize that, once... and it comes to an end, and you're like, "That's it? How the hell does that work?" And then you see Split, and I had no idea that what was going to happen at the end of Split happened, and then that happened, and now we've got Glass, which is coming out in January, and it's like these were comic book movies before there were comic book movies. You know,
I'm looking forward
think
to
about
Glass, definitely.
what's that?
Looking forward to the new movie is what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, you know, the first Blade movie. I can remember going and seeing that in the movie theater, and I had friends who were like, "Well, who's Blade? Is that a guy from the comic books?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh, well, you know, like I could go out and read Blade comics." And at the time, I don't even think they were doing one. I don't even think it had been done in, you know, they might have had the whole Midnight Sun, whatever that Marvel series was, where he had a series for a little while. But
They,
heck, I don't even remember.
they did have a
And,
Blade comic book itself at one point, but that was probably after the movie came out.
and I can just remember um, people asking about it, being going, you know, and having to explain who this character was. And I said, if you can envision Shaft with a bandolero of teak steaks killing vampires, and they're like, Shaft, you mean Sam Jackson? And I'm like, no, Richard Roundtree, the original. You know,
No.
get a role model. Get a role model. That's all I can tell you. So, but no, Labyrinth of Evil is, or Shadows of Evil. I'm sorry. See, that should be his next one, Labyrinth of Evil.
Chris, there's a hint for you.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, no. I think my understanding is he's doing a retro '70s something next. Is what I've heard. That it's going to be like chop socky, black exploitation, retro '70s Marvel. Much like he did with Shadows of Evil, this is going to be sort of the, you know, drug deals on the, you know, the worst side of town, you know, with superheroes, street level superheroes fighting crime and stuff like that. Which I think sounds, you know, if Chris can pull it off like he did with Shadows of Evil, I think it'll be awesome.
Mud Puppy saying he hopes the Bronze Age book gets put out with a bunch of obscure characters that never got write-ups.
Well, you know, I think here's the next one that I'm doing. I did Golden Age, I did Silver Age. It really, I hit it, you know, it was one of those things where I went back and forth on names for a long time. Originally, it was going to be like the Atlas era Marvel RPG source book, and I thought that might be like really confusing to people. And I thought, well, you say Silver Age and people understand what that is. I mean, comic book people understand what that is. So I thought, well, let's just make it as simple as I can. And Marvel's Silver Age is really sort of funny because whereas DC had from like, you know, they started in like 54 and went to the early 70s, Marvel's really didn't start until like 63. What you consider to be the Silver Age of Marvel is Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, Incredible Hulk, all of that in the early 60s. What I covered
61.
in my book was the Atlas era, which was...
Sorry, but wasn't Marvel Universe established in 61? Because that's why the whole Earth 616 is June 6, 61.
It might be 61.
I thought that was the whole meaning behind Earth 616 was June 6, 61.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's at least the thing I've read going around. Because I was like, always, why did this is it Earth 616? And then I was looking around and like the Marvel universe was actually established in 61 on June, and I believe the 6th of June. So,
and it may have been, and I don't know where I got 63. I think that's when I don't know what my dog is barking about. But
Spider-Man.
I think Spider-Man was in 63, if memory serves. But, and I know Thor was. I know that because I make a joke about the source book being 56 years in the making. So, which Steve one-upped me on that with the Hercules book. That one is 3,000 years in the making. So, there
boom,
you go.
boom.
But the Silver Age stuff, I focused more on the Atlas comics in the 50s, and tried to get all of those really obscure characters that were retroed in, the Lost Generation, some of the people, there's a League of Haters, the All Haters League, um, just a couple other people, and like I said, I wanted to make sure that a bunch of those obscure characters got covered. But yeah, Bronze Age book. You're probably, if you're going to see something like that, you're probably going to see with the official handbook to the Gamers Universe. That's probably where you're going to see most of that at. So,
Lord Sidious
go
actually,
ahead.
Alan Moore named it 616, and he wasn't sure of the reason. I've only heard two reasons, and the one I told you, and the other one having to do with it was named after the suite number of the office it was actually founded in. Room number 616.
Gotcha.
I don't know what's true or not true. So
with Alan Moore, it could be anything in between, or some obscure. It could be the size of his the aglets on his shoe, for all I know. It's Alan Moore. I mean, you really, there's no telling. It probably has something to do with the serpent god and the size of the aglet on his shoe. So, but no, I'm currently working on a Old West source book, Marvel Old West. So, I figured, and I was telling somebody, I said, I just wanted to do like an era source book. I wanted to do Golden Age, Silver Age, and I was going to do the Old West and like the colonial days and that time period. And then there's a real nice guy who, and I don't want to out anybody. He used to, once upon a time, he worked for Marvel working on their official handbooks. And he was like, you could do different eras. He said, you don't have to just limit it to those three. And I said, well, that's probably where I'm going to be at right now. I don't, this takes a lot to do, and between this and the Thor book and the mythology series that I'm working on with another fella, I just, I don't know how much more and how much how much energy we got going on here. It'll be a lot of fun.
Well, you guys do some great work, and you guys keep the torch running, or the torch burning really hot. So it's funny, I will talk to people at the gaming store or online or on Facebook, and they're like, oh, I love that Marvel game, I used to play it, and too bad it's gone. I'm like, it's not gone. They're like, well, I know, you can go buy it and still play it, and it lives on in your group. I said, yeah, but you can also join this Facebook group and enjoy all the cool new things that they're producing. They're like, wait, new stuff? I'm like, oh yeah. And I direct them to the file repository that we have, and they look and they're like, wow, Golden Moon, and they're like, this stuff all came out? Yeah. How much? I'm like, it's free. They're like, what, these guys do it for free? I said, yeah, they're insane. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. I've got a writer friend who's like, you ought to figure out some way to charge for this. And I said, yeah, and I could, Disney can land on me with an 800-pound gorilla too. So, it's free. Just take it. Just if Disney looks at it and goes, we really want them to stop, but damn, they make good stuff. Maybe they'll do us all a job.
Unfortunately, I don't. Honestly, stepping back here for a minute, I don't think Disney gives a crap about the Marvel comic image as far as comics go.
Yeah.
They only wanted the movie rights. Why do I say this? Because recently they've been licensing out their IP to IDW and a bunch of other. So it's just like, the way they're heading, it's like they're testing waters, and they just want to be like, hey, you know what? Why don't I just license it out to third party? IDW is not going to be doing a Spider-Man comic, so.
Yeah, and with the Fox deal having gone through, or is now going through, Fantastic Four and X-Men come back to the cinematic universe, and suddenly we now have a Fantastic Four comic.
It's coming out real soon.
Yeah, it's and it's. So I was telling somebody that they canceled Fantastic Four, and they were like, and I told them the reasons why, or what at least everyone was claiming. And they were like, well, do you think they'll cancel X-Men? I said, it'll be a cold day in hell before X-Men gets canceled. Because people are dreaming of the day of the 80s, when it used to do, they were selling 1 million issues at a shot. And those days are long gone. When you're having to spend $6 for a comic book, you know, I'm 46 years old, so and I know you probably are pretty similar in age. I won't, but uh, let's look at the reality of it. $40 worth of comic books or a bag of groceries at our age.
Groceries.
Groceries. I mean, and I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, you can read it online." It's just like reading a Kindle, not the same. There's something about having that ink on your hand and that paper under your,
I
I don't
get.
know.
I still do purchase some comic books because I want to make sure the comic book industry stays alive. So I have a couple things that I'll get. I have like the Amazing Spider-Man. I'll have that, and that comes out once a month, I think. I also have like a couple DC titles because I really love Superman, Batman, the traditionals. I grew up reading those things. I continue supporting those things, but I don't know. IDW, I'm just annoyed about that because IDW is losing so much money now at this point of based upon actions that they've been doing. I don't know. Marvel's gonna be going away as far as comics are concerned.
And I can remember when you used to be able to read any comic book, and I think if there was one good thing about a lot of the stuff they did in the '80s was that it was very reader friendly. Yeah, they spent, and one of the editors and Jim Shooter, one of the editors at Marvel, editor in chief at one time, was like every issue is somebody's first issue. You have to make it accessible to everybody. If you're not making it accessible to everybody, you're going to get someone who will look at it and go, "What the hell is this?" You know. And when they talked about if there's an excellent book, um, Secret History of Marvel Comics, I think is what it's called, and it was released not so long ago, a couple years ago. And they talk about the guy who bought Marvel at one time. One of them was a Yale graduate. They said he took a bunch of comics home and came in on a Monday and called a meeting and called all the editors in, and he's like, "I'm a Yale graduate. I'm not stupid. I don't understand a damn thing that's going on in these comic books. What in the world are you guys doing here? What is this? None of these stories make any sense to me. They just, and it's that the idea, at least years later, we realize what it is. It's soap operas. It's episodic. It's a story that doesn't end.
We're getting a finger wagged at us in chat because we went off topic.
Sorry.
He
we're also over our time limit too. So
he started the derailment. He admits it, but he's like, "Are we going to get back around to speedsters and movement powers?"
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, they're laughing about it in chat. It's fine. But yeah, we derailed and went off on tangents talking about like things how we normally would talk about because that's basically this podcast is mostly just a casual conversation about gaming. Yeah, we have topics, but we like to just talk about things that interest us, and sometimes things derail. So no big deal.
See how fast we derailed? That's lightning speed right there, sir.
There you go. Yeah, see, it was on topic. There you go. But
it was stealth topic.
Have you ever had any players do the option that's listed under hyper running and hyper speed of getting rid of the breathing and the lung capacity to take the 2-column shift up?
I never had players brave enough to do that because they would be like, "Keith's gonna screw me in that." I know.
But I also did notice that with hyper running and hyper speed, they don't list like lightning speed does the ability to stop on the dime or on the one area. Do you notice that as well?
Yeah, and that's whenever I do. I tend to describe hyperspeed as having all the hallmarks of the Power from the Ultimate Powers book, but having that ability to accelerate and to slow down rapidly. I still require agility feats in order to get to corner and everything else. But it's one of those things where I think at the end of the day, unless you're a huge fan of the Flash or Quicksilver, Johnny Quick or whoever,
Speed Demon.
uh, Speed Demon, um, you know, are you going to sit down and try to figure out every possible variation on super speed?
There's
You
some
know,
people that will do it.
yes, I
Yeah.
have. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Some people will do that.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I'm aware. This guy right here. Yeah. So I believe me, I understand it. I mentioned in a previous game we had a character in one of my campaigns called Kaboom, who was a female speedster, and they caught her in a grocery store trying to shoplift. The heroes, they really weren't even in there for anything to do with her. They were going to like restock provisions for the headquarters or whatever. Somebody caught her. Um, I had them make an intuition feat. And I said, you go to reach for something and you realize it's not there. And they're like, well, what do you mean it's not there? I said, well, the box of pasta or whatever you were going to grab isn't there. And he goes,
Oh gosh.
that's weird, And he says, well, I look around and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And I said, well, you notice other things have randomly moved on the shelf or disappeared from the shelf. And she's moving through the store at super speed, stealing stuff, and is moving faster than they are. So somebody finally figures it out and figured out a way to. I want to say they ended up using like cooking oil and just threw it down on the floor in a place where she would have to intersect with them, and she hit the bounce slid through it and bounced off of something, and that's when they realized there's like this 16-year-old girl running around at super speed, and she's like guys, I can't get into this, I'm not going to be a part of this. And they're like, no, you're coming with us, you're shoplifting, whatever. And she picks up a bag of rice and just sort of tossed it up in the air and swatted it, and it blew out like a shotgun on them. And and I talked about how rice traveling at 300 miles an hour is like peppering them, like buckshot. And of course you had the one. There's the one strong guy who really doesn't take much damage, but everybody else is diving for cover. Ramen noodles are exploding in the aisle and that sort of thing. And so you can have a lot of fun with super speed. You can. Yeah.
Mud Puppy's saying that's what I would do if I had a superpowered villain. I'd help myself to free Cheetos.
That's it. Cheetos. Mud Puppy needs a role model. It's all about Cool Ranch Doritos.
Yeah,
right, that's what I'm saying.
I want some of those right now. Yeah.
Cool Ranch
Now,
Doritos.
I have a good question for you. Let's say same scenario. Players were in there, and their characters slowly started noticing it, like you said, like the box of pasta and the blah, blah, blah. Now, let's say one of them had super speed or hyper running or hyper speed or something. Would you let them use the speed force, so to speak, to rev up their own speed to kind of look around to see if he can catch glimpses? Because that's the first thing I would do.
Hyperspeed actually does that.
Oh, okay.
If you read the description, hyperspeed allows you to see things at an accelerated rate, or what in comic book parlance is now referred to as flash time. Because thank you, CW, for giving us the live action version of it. So I mean, them being able to see somebody else moving, it's a possibility. I enjoyed. I thought Smallville was great for that, because you really got to see that for the first time in Smallville. The first time Clark ran into somebody who had super speed that wasn't Bart or Barry Allen or whoever, and the person's running through rain, which is frozen, because the guy's moving so quick, and Clark takes off after him, and it's the first time you see him react to somebody else reacting at super speed, and it was like, holy smokes, that's a great idea. And yeah, they say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and you steal what's best. So use what works for you.
How about lightning speed? How would that apply? Would you let the character run around and make a roll to see if he could see something, or?
I would. That's an interesting thing. The way, at least I play it in my game, it's two different types of speed. Hyperspeed is more for those Flash, Johnny Quick, um, I guess now Quicksilver type characters, whereas Lightning Speed is more like uh, I just run really fast. Um, would I let them make a? I would let them. It's an interesting question. What I would do is probably. Um,
I mean,
I would
lightning
let them
speed
make
at
power feat. I mean, depending on what their rank is, a power feat to determine whether or not they notice something. If it's and now when I say notice something, I'm talking like maybe not necessarily the pasta missing off the shelf, but maybe somebody goes past you, or maybe you feel
a
some
shadow or
breeze
something.
or something. Yeah, see the shadow of something moving. You know, will your speed be fast enough to catch them? Probably not, but would you be able to notice something, say, faster than Hawkeye, who's standing next to you? Probably. I would say, yeah. I would say, you're getting closer to it. Now, if you had hyperspeed, it would be rank to rank determination. If somebody's moving it monstrous and you're moving it remarkable, will you notice them? Sure. Will you catch them? Probably not. You just get creative, cooking oil or a bag of flour or whatever.
So they're saying in chat, hyperspeed, yes. Hyper running, no. Lightning speed is more along the lines of Beast, Spitfire ranks. People who can move the speed of cars, not the speed of bullets.
Right. That's pretty much how that works out, I think, yeah.
So lightning speed really isn't on the same level as someone with hyperspeed at all, even if it was a higher rank or an equal rank.
I would say probably not. I would say if you're going to do it, and this is just looking at, not having looked at lightning speed anytime in the last couple months.
There's not much for it.
Yeah, there's really not much for it. I mean, there's a very basic determination of it, but yeah, their an assessment of it is right. It's more I'm as fast as a moving car, as opposed to hyper running, which is I'm moving all out, actually using enhanced muscles and super speed and the whole 9 yards. I guess if it's a difference between being fast, being really fast, and being really really fast.
True.
For the lightning and for the hyperspeed. So
okay. Well, we are reaching a little over the hour mark now, so we only promise to keep this at pretty much an hour.
Yep.
Around there. So I think that's really going to wrap things up for tonight. What do you think? Anything else we have to say?
I think that pretty much covers it. And I had an idea for something, and it's completely slipped my mind. Man, that's what happens when you get old.
Not much younger than you.
Well, look, you got something to look forward to. Then that's all I can say.
Sweet. So if you're watching this live on YouTube, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel to get the latest notifications. I do videos as far as advice videos for D&D and things like that and other games. And I'm going to be doing a series of other RPG games that I'll be talking about in the future as time permits. Right now it's a little hot in Texas, so it's a little hot in this room. Henceforth why this wall is all open now. So let that nice cool air come in from downstairs. But yeah. Anyway, that's going to be the show. So we're going to say goodnight, everybody. And don't forget to go to classicfaserip.com for the audio version of this podcast, which will come out generally a few days after the video is processed by YouTube. Usually YouTube takes 2 days to process this live stream, and then everyone can listen to it. If you want to support the show via Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/WGP. And you can get early access to the audio shows and throw $1 to the podcast. It helps with the server bills and stuff like that. Anyway,
show us the money.
Yeah, I'm not looking for money. I'm just looking to pay for the bills. That's all. But we're gonna say goodnight, everybody, and thanks for joining us. Join us again real soon. Good night.
All right. Night.